Hi again. What I have for you today is a video giving you instructions on what I think the best way to go about creating this presentation is. So first, what I want you to do is take a look at this overview, the Wonder Research Intro Unit, Unit 6, and pay special attention to the requirements. So notice that in your presentation, you must have a minimum of 5 sources. Now, you already have these sources. You have found these sources, you have read these sources, and you have taken notes on these sources. So that is done. All you want to do now is to take these quotes that you have found, put them into a presentation, and to record yourself explaining what you learned in answer to your first question that you came up with. So that's what I want to kind of show you how to do today. So what I think the best way to do it, now there are many ways of doing this. I'm just going to show you one way, but kind of what I'm going to show you can be applied to, I'm going to show you a Google slide presentation with a Screencastify insert, but you could use Zoom, you could make a website, just all kinds of different ways you can make this, whichever way you're most comfortable with. So what I believe you should do is you are going to start by creating a Google slide presentation. So I've already gone ahead and done this. And so now this is not a complete one. This is one where I've only done 2 sources. I would continue on to use all 5, but I wanted to get this out to you guys today. So I took a simple template and I started by putting into it my guiding question. I wonder what life would be like if we lived on Mars. Then I went ahead and let's say I found 5 sources. Now I only found 2, but as I said, I was trying to get this out quickly to you. So the first source that I found was a website of an article from Popular Mechanics. And all of these slides, 1, 2, 3 slides, and I've kind of have them all in the same background color, are from the same source. So basically, I took 3 quotes, 3 passages from this article, and I put them into slides. And I kind of dressed them up with some pictures, and these pictures actually came from that same article. So very simple. I started with my main question. I wonder what would life be like if we lived on Mars. And then after reading the article, I came up with some other questions. What would the trip to Mars be like? I found a passage that talked a bit about that. Now, when I go ahead and record myself reading this, I am not just going to read this quote and move on. If you look at the rubric, that is not enough. I'm going to go beyond this. I'm going to start with this passage. I probably won't even read the whole thing, but I'll just talk about this passage, what I learned from reading it, and what it means to me in answering this question and even connecting to beyond. I went ahead and found a second passage from the same article, put that on the second slide with a picture. Again, when I record myself presenting this, I am not just going to read this passage. Again, I may not read the whole passage. I'm going to talk beyond this passage and analyze it and explain what it means to me. Same thing with the third one. Have a passage, I don't necessarily read it, but I go beyond it, I analyze it, and I explain what it means. Then I move on to my second source. Now, the second source was a Google Scholar, and remember, you have to have 2 of your articles from scholarly databases like Badgerlink or Google Scholar. This one was by Reed Reiner and Jennifer Claudius from Anthropology and Education Quarterly, and it was cited appropriately. So after reading that article, I came up with some questions that branch off of my main question. This one, should we even try to establish a settlement on Mars? And I found a passage that kind of answers it. And again, I would go beyond it and I would analyze it in my own words and explain what it means. And then I find another related question. Would we benefit from establishing settlements on other planets? Again, I have a passage that tries to answer it. I would go beyond that. And basically that is how the presentation should be put together. Now, I think this would work very well. And what I have is I do have my presentation that I made with this on the next slide. So go to that one if you want to view that and see what I said as if I were actually giving this presentation. Now, how do you actually get this box in here when you're making a slideshow? So here's what I would do is basically you start from the presentation itself. And then what you're going to do is I use Screencastify. And by doing that, it's being recorded right now, but it's going to bring up a box. And by making sure you have your camera picked and your microphone picked and then started, it's going to place this box in your bottom right-hand corner. It's going to count you down from 3, 2, 1, and you'll begin. And then you start from this screen. Don't start from the editing screen, but the presentation screen. And it's going to count down to 3, 2, 1, and go. And then you can go ahead and start with this by saying, I wonder what would life be like if we lived on Mars? The first thought I had is, what would the trip to Mars be like? And then I would go into my presentation. So that is one way about going about doing this. So again, you can use other ways of doing this. You can use Zoom. You could do a website. But really what I want is I want your quotes, 2 quotes from 5 sources minimum. I want you to be explaining and analyzing in your own words in a presentation type of format. And then always look to the rubric. And this is what I'm going to look for when I'll be watching your video and I'll be looking at this. Did you introduce the question? Is your question strong and thought-provoking? Does it include other complex and focused research questions like I had? Is your evidence clearly integrated? Meaning, did the quotes that you picked, do they actually answer the questions that you posed? Is your analysis clear and in depth? That is where you'll go beyond what you have written in the slide. That is definitely something that is beyond the quotes. These are your words and your analysis. That is what I'm looking for. Presentation being well organized and easy to follow. This is a good organization because it goes from source 1 to source 2. I would add source 3, source 4, and source 5. Very good, very easy organization there. Does a presenter fully understand the topic? And that is basically, as you analyze and explain, does it sound like you know what you were talking about? Do you stumble over words? Are you misunderstanding what you are trying to explain? Things like that. Are your sources multitudinous and reliable? This is basically the required 5 sources, 2 from a scholarly database. Acknowledging a counter-argument if applicable. Now, if you watch my next video here, I do include a counter argument, and so that's basically, a way of getting some bonus points there. And lastly, does it relate to the outside world and reasons beyond the obvious? Meaning, why am I even asking this? Why am I wondering what life would be like on Mars? Well, it is a very real possibility that we could establish settlements on Mars, and it is a very real possibility that we may need to at some date in the future. That is my connection to the real world. So basically, if you want to know if you've done well, take your presentation when it's done and check off each one of these bullet points to make sure that you have covered everything you need to cover. All right, I hope this works for you. Go ahead. On the next slide, there's a video of a finished presentation, although again, it only has 2 sources. And you are going to need 5, but it follows what should be in the presentation. Lastly, I want to remind you that you also have to have your annotated bibliography in MLA format submitted to Turnitin.com when you submit this presentation to me via email. So don't forget that. Ask me any questions if you have, if they come to mind, and I'll be answering them as soon as I receive them. So good luck, and you're going to do great.